Gun violence, it's one of the biggest issues that we face as a city, and now we're getting a different look at the effects in a brand new book. This morning, we're joined by Northwestern professor and author Alex Kotlowitz to talk about his new book, An American Summer, Love and Death in Chicago. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Definitely an important topic. The numbers are unbelievable. We're talking 14,000 people having been killed, 60,000 wounded. This is from 1990 to 2010. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, the numbers are staggering, and for me, the thing that's so disturbing is the stubborn persistence of the violence. And I think the first thing that you got to note is that, most of the violence are happening in these neighborhoods that are deeply distressed, communities that are really struggling. And there's not the urgency around the violence that there needs to be.
That
and
urgency
I should also
is non-existent.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say non-existent, but it's not.
It feels that way sometimes.
Right.
Yes,
and I
right.
think and for me, the part of it is I think we've completely underestimated the impact the violence has had on the spirit of individuals and the spirit of community.
Yeah, it's an energy that's impacted.
Yeah.
So I'm from the South Side. I'm born and raised on the South Side, but I've moved and lived in other cities for my career. And when I go to those cities, it's a completely different mentality than it is here in Chicago. We have become numb to this violence, to think that this is anywhere near normal.
Right. Yeah, I think there is a sense that people living in these communities certainly get numbed and hardened and accustomed to it, and yet it gets in your bones. The violence shapes you, and these are stories about people who are trying to fight from keeping it from defining them, from who they are.
Yeah, they're fighting for survival. Let's talk a little bit more about your book. So last year, we know the most violent summer included 72 shot and 13 killed in the weekend of August 3rd.
Right. Last year.
Last year.
Yeah, right,
okay.
right.
And so your book is actually on the summer of 2013. Why that summer?
It was a fairly arbitrary summer, and I just needed some scaffolding for the book. I will tell you, you go out and report and it's messy, and so I wanted some boundaries. And so it's a collection of 14 intimate stories of people emerging from the violence and trying to reckon with it. People who are standing erect in this world that's slumping around them, some of them moving forward heroically, pushing back.
Mm-hmm. Can I tell you why I'm a little bit nervous to read your book? And I was reading some of it this morning, but being from the community, these stories are real. And you're giving a face to these people who may get a minute 30-second on the news.
Right.
2 minutes on the news,
right. Maybe, right.
And so sometimes it feels like the people on the north sides of the city, people downtown, don't fully understand what's happening.
Right. No, I think that again, this is what I've tried to do in this book is give some humanity to the people who are been touched by the violence, and to understand why it stays with you and what you have to do to keep it at bay. And the other part of it is, of course, you see in all the people that I spend time with, or many of them at least, the same kind of symptoms we saw in veterans returning from combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. People are angry, easy to anger, they get agitated, they're hypervigilant, lack sleep. But the big difference, of course, is that there's nothing about their post-traumatic stress, because they lose a loved one and you wake up the next morning and you're looking over your shoulder at what might happen next.
Mm-hmm. It's in this constant mode of survival,
yeah.
This constant state of survival. You were saying that you were not wanting this book to be a plan to fix the city's violence. What impact do you hope this book will have?
Yeah, so it's not I'm very clear about it. It's not a book about public policy. It's not my bailiwick. It's not my forte. I just wanted to tell stories. And, my hope is, and I guess my ambitions are reasonably modest, is I hope that people read these stories and they think about themselves and the world just a little bit differently. And if we're so fortunate that maybe these stories incite politicians and public policy makers to act, to recognize the urgency, the crisis at hand. And I will say it's not only Chicago. I mean, as bad as Chicago is, it's not even in the top 10 of the most violent cities. So I could have written this book in so many other places in this country. It's really about who we are as a nation.
Mm-hmm. So why'd you choose Chicago then? What stood out to you that was different?
Well, I
than
choose
other
Chicago
cities?
because it's my home. It's and it's the place that I know the best. It's also has become kind of the poster child for the kind of urban violence we see across the country because the numbers are so high, not per capita, but the numbers themselves are so high. So I chose it because this is where I live. It's the people I know.
So besides Grab Your Book, because I will say that it's giving a face to the people who don't always get their story told, which is why it's so important. And it's more than just a quick news story. Yeah. But what do you want the people in the community to walk away with? How can we fix this from your perspective?
Well, I mean, I think there's so much we can do. I mean, again, and this feels so self-evident, I almost hesitate to mention it, but we're talking about these communities that are deeply distressed, communities that are, for me, when I wrote my first book, There Are No Children Here, 28 years ago, I mean, the thing that's so sobering is how little things have changed. And so, I mean, the first thing we've got to do is sort of recommit ourselves to rebuilding and refortifying these communities. The other thing is we've got to find a way to deal with the kind of trauma that people have experienced coming out of these acts of violence. And we've completely neglected that.
Alex, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here, certainly, and telling stories like this. Alex Kotlowitz's new book is called An American Summer, Love and Death in Chicago. It's available in bookstores and Amazon. Plus, Alex will be taking part in the Chicago Humanities Festival. That's on April 27th. So tickets go on sale next week at chicagohumanities.org. That's where you can find all of the info.